Maki confirmed that it is. So yeah, we can start. So basically, thank you all for joining today. And as Maki said, this is somewhat intermediate, basic to intermediate workshop. And yeah, if you haven't already, go check out all the workshops before this one, as it will be a great starter for understanding what we're going to talk about today. So basically, today's workshop is about Web3 marketing, or basically how crypto marketing works, or how Solana marketing works, or how Web3 marketing differs from Web2 marketing. But we are going to talk about marketing. And why marketing? Well, you can have the best product in the world, but if you don't market it in an adequate way, you definitely won't get users, you won't get revenue, you won't be successful, and so on and so on. On the other hand, if you have a lousy product with good marketing, you can also have a pretty good user base, you can have pretty good revenue, and you can, of course, eventually die out because you have a lousy product. But in the meantime, you can earn a lot of money, meaning that marketing can basically change your perspective of a certain product, a feature, NFT collection, community, whatever, very, very well if a marketer or a marketing team knows what they're doing. So I'm going to talk about, as I said, from a business perspective here. So basically from a perspective of a company which is starting or is already present in the Web3 space. But I will also try to touch ground with your personal marketing and how can you potentially apply this knowledge to your personal marketing when it comes to your online presence and building your own brand. So we here at Solflare, as Maki already said, especially in my department, we run everything through data, and we definitely base every single decision that we make on data. So if we get data back and the data tells us, okay, you are reaching this numbers, and you're reaching this and these KPIs, then it means that we are doing something good, or it means that we are doing something wrong. But getting that data is not as easy as it sounds. And later on in the workshop, I will explain why it can be very challenging to do so in Web3, especially when compared to Web2. But when we do get the data, then we are trying to make either, bold decisions of moving in some sort of directions and test as many possible things as we can so that we can find the optimal direction when it comes to branding, advertising, growth, community, socials, and so on for the whole Solflare vision and mission. In order to do so, apart from data, I have 3 principles that I always go by and that basically always work. And this is like 12 years of marketing experience talking from my mind. If you follow these 3 principles, there is a very good chance that you could be successful when it comes to marketing. But of course, it's not that straightforward. You do need to actually understand what you are doing, and of course, know how to actually get the attention of your users. So the first principle is football. You need to play football to be successful in marketing. Obviously, I'm kidding. This is just a visual, and I wanted to use a football pitch to actually be for me easier to explain it to you. This is something that Maki already mentioned in a couple of workshops ago, I think. And this is my principle that I've been applying to all of my marketing campaigns and basically all the way through Web2 to Web3. So, and that is this, that the average social media user scrolls through around 91 meters of content and ads daily, and spends around 58 minutes per day on the platforms. So basically, that is the approximate length of a football pitch. Football pitch is around from 90 to 110 meters by regulations. It's more or less 100 meters. So basically, you scroll through your daily content and ads equivalent to the length of a football pitch, which is a lot. And you do it in on average in 58 minutes per day. When we put that into formula for velocity, so basically the speed of your scrolling, we get that you are scrolling at the speed of 2.5 to 3.5 centimeters per second, which means that you are scrolling pretty fast. And it's very hard to actually get the attention of users if they are scrolling so fast. So if they're scrolling so fast through that 91 meters of content, that would mean, which obviously, as I said before, Maki shared with you already, that each piece of content or ad is seen by users for only 1 second. So what that means? That means that when you're scrolling through your, X, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, or any other social media, you actually have only 1 second to capture the attention of your user, of your potential user, or your existing user, in order for them to interact with your content or your ad, which furthermore means that your content or ad needs to be so interesting or so eye-catching that in that 1 second, you will capture the attention of your user. And that is extremely hard. So while our design team is working on visuals that are going out for our socials, for the community, especially for performance marketing, so basically for our ads that we are advertising on X, on Reddit, on Facebook, Instagram, now on TikTok, and so on, I always think of, okay, but is this visual or this video enough or interesting enough for a user to stop and interact with it in that 1 second? If I think that it's not, then we need to redo the whole design of a visual or of a video. Basically, of course, you can't know for sure if something will perform good or not. You have to test it out. You need to have at least 5 different creatives, 5 different directions, and so on. But if those creatives are not eye-catching enough, you will not get the attention of your users in a way that you would want them to. And obviously, when they're scrolling, through that feed at the speed of 3 centimeters per second, you will definitely not reach them. You will get charged by impression because they will scroll through your ad, but they will not stop and actually interact with your content or with your ad, and then click on it, go to your Google Play or App Store, or to your website, or basically to interact with your product. So before anything goes out, you need to be sure, or 80 to 90% sure, that this visual or this creative is good enough to capture the attention of your potential users and existing users in this 1 second. And when you put things in that perspective, then that changes the whole gameplay altogether. Because people often like send me ideas for creatives and for visuals and so on, like, hey, maybe this could work, or maybe this could work, or should we try with this or that? And I say to them, okay, but would you stop at this visual if you had 1 second to look at it? And if the answer is no, we automatically discard that idea and move to another one, which is more eye-catching, which is different from others. And many of you obviously are on social media and active on social media. If you see ads from central exchanges, crypto wallets, crypto-related products, and so on, they're pretty much the same. Like, you have a mock-up on a mobile phone showing the product, showing the application. You have a call to action which says download now or buy now or whatever, but they are pretty much the same. And we as users or as consumers of this content became so used to seeing that type of content that we don't even notice it anymore. Like, you're scrolling through content, you don't even notice the ads because they're not standing out. So you need something different to stand out in order for your users and potential users to stop and interact with your ad or content because it is that good, or it is that engaging for the user to actually engage with. That is my number one principle when it comes to marketing campaigns and when it comes to online presence and trying to reach more users and bringing more downloads to Solflare. If I can't do that in that 1 second, then something is wrong. And we need to go back to the drawing board and we need to test more stuff out, more creatives, more targeting options, more platforms, different budget allocations, and so on and so on and so on. So, and everything, as Maki mentioned before, everything which I just said can be seen in our data analytics tools, where we analyze, okay, how is this ad performing, or how is this content performing in terms of how long a user spends hovering over our ad or content, and how many clicks do we get, how many interaction, how many click-through rate, and so on and so on and so on. So that is principle number 1. And never forget that principle. When you post something, think to yourself, is this good enough for users to stop and interact with my content, even though they will see it for only 1 second? Principle number 2, Candy Crush Saga. Download it now and you will get extra points every single time you pass a level. I'm kidding, obviously, again. So if you played Candy Crush Saga, and I've been playing it a lot, especially lately on my flights, because I have nothing better to do when I'm traveling with airplane. So I play Candy Crush Saga, or I simply fall asleep. But yeah, so when you play Candy Crush Saga, you pass levels, and as you pass levels, you get this multipliers or boosts. So basically, when you pass levels on your first try, you get these boosts that you can then use on next levels that are coming your way. So, but once that you lose that streak, so if you pass 10 levels at first try and get these boosts, and then fail the 11th level, you will lose all of the boosts that you got because of these 10 levels that you passed on the first try. And it's pretty much the same in marketing. What does that mean? That means that once you start with your marketing activities, with your presence, with your content being pushed to all of the audiences that you identified as your target audiences, once you start with all of these activities, with growth campaigns, with community incentives, with performance marketing, so basically with advertising and so on, there is no going back. What does that mean? Exactly what I just described with Candy Crush Saga. So when you get that streak, when you get that virality, when you get that momentum, and the users actually start to identify themselves with your brand, and when users start to recognize your brand as the go-to brand for that specific niche, in this case, crypto market or Solana, in terms of Solflare, you can't stop. Why? There was a pretty interesting survey, or basically a research done, that said that when a brand starts to advertise or starts to be present online and is present for 3 months, so 3 months non-stop, you are posting, you are advertising, you're having growth campaigns, you're having marketing workshops, you are having community gatherings, everything is going on for 3 months non-stop, and then you stop for 1 month. When you start again, after that 1 month of being silent, you're basically starting from zero. Exactly like in Candy Crush Saga. You lose all of your boosts, you lose all of your momentum, and users forget about you that fast. So if you're 3 months active and present, and then you stop for just 1 month, when you start again in 3 months, it will be as if this first 3 months never happened. Like, users will forget you that fast. And that is why this is the second principle, which means that you need to be an always on player. Always on means exactly what always on means. You need to be always on, never off. Once you start, there's no going back. You need to post every day. You need to run your campaigns every day. you need to advertise every day. There is no, okay, we will now stop because this and this and that. Of course, there are some external factors, for example, for social media trends, for, I don't know, crypto-related policies and so on, which could potentially disrupt your momentum, but you should do everything in your power to always be on and never be off. So once you start, there is no going back, because consistency isn't optional. Like, if you want to succeed, you can't think of you can't think to yourself, okay, I could be consistent and post every day, or post in the same intervals, or have a posting frequency that is good, or being present on all of these channels and reaching my audience, or maybe I will not do that because I don't feel like it. Consistency isn't optional. Consistency is survival. And what that means? It means if you're not consistent, you will die. Your project, your company, your self-brand will die out. But when I say die out, that doesn't mean that you will disappear, obviously, if you stop your activities for any reason whatsoever. And there, as I said, could be some external reasons why somebody would stop being present, especially from personal point of view, like if something were to happen to, I don't know, a family member, or something is happening which is serious in your personal life. Obviously, that you can't be always present, but have in mind that then you will have to start over. And for example, and this is a great example because it's coming from the source itself, and that is me. I was so active on my Twitter profile, X profile, Callahan. I was posting all day. I was tweeting every day. I gained so much momentum. I was gaining so much engagement and reach on my posts and so on. And then I stopped. I stopped because I had a shit ton of work to do. I was traveling a lot lately. I was distracted, and so on and so on, which, by the way, are all excuses. There is no excuse for not being able to, I don't know, separate like 5 minutes per day or 10 minutes per day and to actually tweet a good tweet. So that's not an excuse. But I'm saying that me stopping in terms of tweeting out and being constantly present now led to that when I do tweet, I get far less engagement and far less reach than I used to. If I don't get a retweet from Solflare or from Maki or from Toma, or I don't get that kind of, vice versa engagement going on, I will not get the numbers nearly as close as I got like, I don't know, 3 months ago. And this is exactly what I'm talking about. So once you start, you can't stop and then start over and think, okay, I will just pick up where I left things before, I don't know, a month or two. It simply won't happen. And when it comes to your personal accounts, there is no damage. There is no harm done. Like, now I'm not getting more engagement, but does it even matter? At the end of the day, it doesn't. It just affects my presence. It affects my popularity, or whatever you want to call it. But does it affect my finances, my mental health, my, I don't know, connections in the space, my friendships? Not so much. But from a business point of view, from a company point of view, if a brand was to do exactly what I did with my account, stop tweeting, stop being present, stop all the advertising campaigns, then you will lose users, you will lose revenue, you will lose retention, you will lose virality, you will lose momentum, and eventually your competitors will 100% catch up with you if you are a market leader, or they will simply stomp over you, and stomp over you hard, and simply kill you and never look back to see if you made it or not. So if you're running a company, a startup, or a project, have this in mind. Once you start, there is no going back. You need to be always on present in order to succeed. Okay, so now we have two principles that are very important. One is you have 1 second of your audience's attention, and the other is that consistency isn't optional, it's survival. So once you start your activities, there is no stopping unless you want to succeed. And third principle, when you apply these two, is also a very interesting one. And actually the one that before this workshop, or basically, before I started to present, I think that Tommy or Maki mentioned this, and that is there is no correlation whatsoever between engagement numbers and the intent of users to actually buy or use a certain product. And this is actually a quote. This is not my quote. This is a quote from Meta advertising team. Meta obviously is the company that owns Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp. And this quote was said to me, it was not even written down, it was said to me on a meeting like in 2018 or 2019. I think it was like, 6 or 7 years ago. And I was running a few campaigns for automotive industry and for a few web shops. And we were driving engagement numbers, impressions. We wanted to have as much impressions as we can in order to get that brand awareness going on, to be present, and so on and so on. And we thought if we have engagement numbers, so basically if people click on our content, they are liking, sharing, reposting, sending that content to their friends in the DMs and so on, we thought, okay, so basically this content is working. And we can definitely say that it is successful. And then we got on a call with Meta and asked them, okay, look, we are getting all of this engagement. So basically users are engaging with our content, but we are not seeing an increase in sales. We are not seeing an increase in purchases. We're not seeing an increase in add to carts events. So basically people are going to web shop, but they're not even adding the items to the cart. So they're just engaging with our content. And then a person from Meta, and why I didn't name him, because I honestly can't remember who it was, but I know he was a part of Meta advertising team, said to me this quote. And when he said this to me, I honestly started to rethink every single business decision that I made up until that point when it comes to advertising and when it comes to understanding users. And why would somebody interact with your content and not be interested in your product? And I started to think that over and over, and I was looking at this quote that there is no correlation between engagement numbers and intent to actually buy or use a product. And I said to myself, okay, the only way for me to understand this quote or to see if it's true is to actually test it out. So we created a whole different bunch of creatives, a whole different approach and a whole different strategy. And we started to run campaigns that were specifically targeting users who had the highest chance of actually converting from a user to a buyer. And all of our campaigns were run with conversion objective. So basically you are charged when you advertise per conversion. So basically when a person, and that conversion can be anything. You can say that conversion for you is adding an item to a cart, or finishing a purchase, or leaving, or filling out a contact form. Anything can be a conversion, but you need to define it as an advertiser. So when we defined what conversion is for us as a company, we started to test it out, and we actually saw massive increase and peaks of revenue coming from new users and purchases that were going on the web shop, but also in stores when it comes to this automotive industry, or the automotive industry giant, which I won't name at this point. But so when we changed that approach, we started to understand, okay, I could be a car lover, I could like your content because I like cars, but am I interested in buying that car? Not at all. Like, I have no intent in buying that car. So engagement numbers mean absolutely nothing. And that is true in Web 2 as well as in Web 3. In Web 3, even more, you can see all of these engagement farmers, people who are farming engagement all day, even botting their tweets and so on. So basically, if you do have large engagement numbers and you are thinking, okay, I'm doing good content, I'm doing great, potentially you are doing everything wrong. At the end of the day, all that matters is how much revenue are you generating and what is the user acquisition compared to user retention at the end of the day when it comes to your product and your features or your services. Whatever you are selling something. Either is your company or project or a startup, you're selling something to users. Maybe it's an experience, maybe it's a product, maybe it's a feature, maybe it's a service, but you are selling something to your customers. So these three principles are the most important ones when trying to understand how users behave in this space, and especially when it comes to understanding your approach towards marketing campaigns and how you want to actually make them successful and how you want to grow. 1 second rule of user attention: always on, never stop mindset and strategy, and understanding that engagement isn't equal to conversions and to product usage. Those three principles should be always considered and always have in back of your mind before you start a certain campaign, before you start advertising towards your audiences, or before you even start being present in online space. Okay, now that you have these three principles and you have them back in your mind, what's the fourth thing that is most important, and that I have said it many times by now already, that word, that is audience. So why Solana projects win or fail? Because it all comes down to audience. If you are doing great content, if you have good engagement numbers, even if you have good conversion numbers, that doesn't mean necessarily that you will win or that you will fail. But Solana projects in particular fail because they simply don't understand their audience. They don't understand who is their target audience, and they don't understand who are they talking to when they are actually promoting stuff towards their users across all channels, but also when they are trying to figure out what growth hacks can we implement, or how can we actually make users or audiences to interact with our projects. So I've been here like for more than 5 years now, and in Solana ecosystem, and I've seen many projects fail who basically I would bet my right arm and say that they will actually be successful because of how good the fundamentals of the project were. But because of the wrong approach and not understanding their audience, they simply died out and failed. So, as I said, Solana projects win or fail basically because they do or they do not understand their audience, or because they're not applying some of these three principles that I just shared with you. And that could really be a game changer when you are actually trying to understand your audience, but also trying to succeed in this space and then be able to grow your business short and long term. While talking about audiences, this is, I would say, a great representation of our space. You have on the left, and I'm not sure how many of you actually remember this project. This is how was it called? Tribal ape something, or ape tribe something. All I know that I minted it and then sold it for like 100 SOL, which was great at that point. But yeah, basically this is a representation of an average crypto user who is degen, looking for flips, tends to panic sell, jumps from product to product. He's not loyal, doesn't care about tech, and so on. And on the right, you have, obviously, I think that most of you recognize Soul Big Brains PFP, and he is, a power user. He's loyal. He appreciates tech and innovation. He supports teams. He loves quality communities. He creates volume, which is at the end of the day the most important thing for products like Solflare, for example, because volume means everything. Volume equals revenue. So you have these two groups of users, and this is a desired user, obviously. You would definitely want this kind of user using your product. And on the left, you have an average crypto user, which is degen and is not like the right one at all. So if you were to choose between these two users, I think that most of you, for their respective projects and companies and products, would choose the right user. You would choose this power user who is loyal to your product, who creates volume and so on. But reality is that you need both. You can't have one without the other. If you only have this so-called desired user, you are losing like 95% of the space or of the ecosystem, and you will only have these power users, and you won't have community on your side. You won't have degens on your side, because I'm a degen, but am I also loyal? Do I also cherish technology and innovation? Do I cherish growth and the projects and so on? I do, but I'm also degen. I also tend to panic sell. I trade with emotions. I am maybe not the perfect user for a product. So I fall into both categories. You have those kind of people as well, but you need both enabled to be successful, and for you to understand how do you approach this average crypto user and this so-called desired user. You won't approach them with the same communication. You won't approach them with the same brand direction, and you definitely won't approach them through same channels. For example, user on the right could be more active on Reddit. Reddit is a social media where you have all of these discussions going on, subreddits, asking questions, getting answers, AMA sessions, so on. So basically, this user on the right could be more active on Reddit, and you will try to target him there with a whole different creatives and whole different communication than you will user on the left, who is potentially more active on TikTok, for example. TikTok is a fast-paced social media meme kind of UGC content thing going on, and you definitely want to capture their attention as well, but you won't do it with the same creatives and the same communication that you will apply to Reddit in order to target this so-called desired user. So you need to understand that your audience has many different characteristics, and that you need to adapt to every single one of those characteristics in a different manner. So you can't have one visual, one creative, one communication, and then think of yourself, okay, but why am I only getting these kind of users and not this ones? Because you're not approaching them in the right manner. And that is why Solana projects tend to fail, because they don't understand their users or their potential users, and are not addressing all of this sea of different characters, of different user characteristics and demographics, which I think that Solflare does very, very good. And that is especially because of these guys with me on the stream. And when you do have both of these users, then you have community. Community in Web3, as opposed to Web2, is one of the most important things in marketing, and especially in projects or companies' success, that you can think of. Like, if you have community on your side, you have everything. If you don't have community, you have very little. So when you understand, then you need to approach these two users in a whole different manner. Then you can start to build community and have benefits for both. Degens want one thing, Whales want a different thing, somebody else wants something else, airdrop hunters want airdrops, NFT lunatics like myself want NFTs being given to them or giveaway or whatever, and so on and so on. You have like, we at Solflare have like 8 or 9 different types of audiences that we identified as important enough to be addressed with different creatives, different targeting options, and different approaches. So when you understand that, then you can actually apply those 3 principles that I talked to you in the beginning and actually start to be successful when reaching your audiences, which are so different across the board. And having that in mind, what does that mean in order for your audience to actually respond to you as a company or as an individual? And in that 1 second, what will capture users' attention or audience's attention and actually make them interact or engage or respond to your content and to your message that you're trying to give them? There's a lot of different answers to this question, a lot of different answers, because obviously there is a lot of different formats of content that actually do work very well with crypto audiences. You have teasers, you have podcasts, you have giveaways, you have launches, you have airdrops, you have educational content, you have a lot of different content pillars that work very well with crypto audience. But there is one single thing that always works. And when I say always, I mean always. 100 times out of 100 times, it will work. And now when I show it to you, it's actually not a visual, it's a one word. You will think to yourself, yeah, well, that's obvious. And yeah, it is obvious, but it actually does work every single time. And that is FOMO. When you create FOMO, being it a real FOMO or an artificial one, it always works. I haven't seen one single example where FOMO didn't work. And this FOMO doesn't need to be FOMO, okay, I'm missing out on an airdrop. I'm missing out on a token launch. I'm missing out back in the days on an NFT mint. I'm missing out on being a part of, I don't know, a seed round as an investor or something like that. No. FOMO means simply not being a part of that community, of that product, of that new feature that is going live, or that cohort of users who will be given a beta access or something similar. So basically, any kind of FOMO works. When you create that feeling inside of people, you get, and this is actually something very interesting because psychiatrists have actually started to talk about FOMO in a manner where they actually like address FOMO as an actual disorder. Like it's not recognized as a mental disorder, don't get me wrong, and I don't think that it ever will be recognized as an actual mental disorder, but it is recognized as a part of some anxiety disorders, some generalized anxiety disorders, some depression disorders, and so on, because FOMO is a very tricky thing, and it definitely can drive a person mad. Like I've been there, we've all been there. Like you miss out on a token launch, you miss out on an NFT mint, you are not whitelisted for something, you miss out on a buy that after the next day goes 100x or something like that. You miss out on something, and then creating a fear of missing out constantly is definitely not good for your mental health. Is definitely not good for your presence in this space altogether. But from a company perspective, you want users to always feel FOMO. And this is maybe, morally challenging or morally questionable. Like you want to create FOMO in users, but at the same time, this FOMO can actually affect their mindset and their mind well-being, which is definitely not something that I would want to do, or as I'm sure anybody from Solflare would want to do. But from a company perspective, you want that FOMO. You need that FOMO. You need that person will feel as if they're missing out on something if they don't interact with your content, if they're not using your product, or if they're not being onboarded to your product in order them to benefit from what you are offering them. So FOMO, even though it can be negative, it also can be very positive. Like, okay, Solflare is here to provide you self-custody, to provide you your financial independence, and you are missing out on that because you are not using Solflare. Now we have cards. Now we also have two different products that are going live very soon, which obviously I can't talk about at the moment because I will get fired. But it will all lead towards that self-custody and that financial independence moment. And it will create FOMO. It's already creating FOMO. I'm getting, I don't know, 2 or 3 DMs daily asking me for Solflare cards. Yo, dude, how can I get a Solflare card? Can I get a custom-made Solflare card? Can I get my NFT printed on Solflare card? Users are constantly feeling that FOMO, which is great for a company to actually grow and to actually be able to sell their products and their features towards their audiences. So FOMO is something that always works, always. But it's just a matter of how you create that FOMO, and are you creating it from a morally clean perspective, or you are actually creating artificial FOMO, and then you are actually creating negative FOMO in users' minds. So be careful with this FOMO moment, but also don't be afraid to exploit it, because if you have a real product or real benefits for users that they should then feel FOMO for not using your product, then that is 100% legit, and you should definitely apply that towards your marketing strategies and your marketing approaches. All right, so now that we understand, or I hope that we understand, how you should apply those 3 principles from the start of this workshop towards your target audiences, and how you should understand your audiences, how you should separate them, and how you should create community around them, and how you should create FOMO for not using your product, you want this. And that is basically what Maki said at the beginning. It's what I do, it's what my department does, and that is data. So John Wanamaker said this quote in 1919, which was 106 years ago, and this quote applies today in the same manner that applied 160 years ago. So half the money I spend on advertising is wasted. The trouble is I don't know which half. And what does that mean? That means that when you spend money in advertising, you, and all of the figures that I'm going to use now is only for purposes of demonstration. But let's say you spend 100K on advertising. You spend 20K on Meta, you spend 20K on X, 20K on Reddit, 20K on TikTok, and 20K on Google. And you're getting momentum, you're gaining traffic, you're gaining users, you're gaining revenue. But if you don't have data analytics tools set up correctly, and your attribution methods also set up correctly, then you will see that you are getting more momentum, you will see that you are getting more users and more revenue, but you don't know what is driving that momentum. Is Google responsible for that? Is X responsible for that? Is Meta? I don't know. All I can see at that point is how much am I spending per user on specific channel, but I am not sure which of those users is generating the most revenue, which of those users has the highest LTV, which means lifetime value, and which of those users has the highest retention. And if I don't understand that, I can't fully understand how are these audiences that I talked about earlier behaving when interacting with my product. For example, we spend 20K on Meta, right? And 20K on Google. And for example, you are paying a customer $2 on Google. So basically, you're paying $2 every single time somebody installs your app. And on Meta, you are spending $10 per user when they're coming into your app. And now, only looking at those numbers, you would think to yourself, okay, if I'm spending $2 on Google for one single user and $10 on Meta, logical thing is, let's move all of our budget to Google because it's the cheapest one. I will get the most users. I will get the most traffic. I will get the most momentum, which is true. But in the back of that data is product data. So you need to match this marketing data with product data and see how are those users behaving after they actually download your app. In this case, Solflare app. So if you're paying $10 per user that are coming from Meta, and those users then have LTV of $100, or they are spending and generating revenue in a range of $100, and the ones coming from Google are spending $2, that means that we shouldn't allocate our budgets to Google, we should allocate our budgets to Meta, because we are getting 10x of what we are actually spending on users on Meta compared to Google. And for us to being able to see that data, we need very, very, very complex systems that could combine the product data and marketing data, and then we can have the whole user journey in front of us and being able to conclude, okay, users which came from Reddit, for example, spend the most amount of time in our app, used swap as our feature the most, and stayed active in our app of an average of 60 days. And when we have all of this data and all of this journey of a user, then we can for sure say, okay, users from Reddit are the most valuable users to us when it comes to user acquisition and retention. And the same applies to any kind of digital channel out there. If we can track it, as I said, in this way, where we have the whole and full picture of how is user behaving from the moment he saw our content or our ad, all the way up to actually using our product and being an active Solflare user. So that's why I said that this quote applies the same today as it did 106 years ago, because up until 8 months ago, we at Solflare, we were also pretty blind when it comes to data. And implementing all of these data analytics tools and systems and so on can be very tricky in crypto, because you need to track users in order for you to understand users. And to track users, you need to have cookies on your website, you need to have consent modes inside of your wallet, you need to have consent modes on your website, and so on and so on. And we are not even now tracking you guys, users, in a way that, for example, I would want Solflare to do. Why? Because we don't want yet to track you that much, because we don't want for you to feel insecure, unsafe, or whatever. But when you are actually knowledgeable and when you understand how things work, then you understand that we are actually not tracking your finances or your trading or your swaps. We are only tracking your behavior, and that is only if you give us consent. And as I said, this is still not implemented. You're not being tracked, but you are actually always being tracked via Google, via X, via Meta, via TikTok, and so on, because that is the basically like natural thing occurring on these social media channels and digital channels altogether. So what we can track, we do track, but are we still kind of blind on one eye? We are. When will that be implemented or resolved? I don't know. But you as a crypto product, when you're running a company, definitely want to have that full picture of a user all the way from the beginning to the end. And there is a funny story when it comes to data, because it's an anecdote actually. Google started obviously tracking users via their behavior, cookies, their search engine behaviors, and so on, even via their microphones on their Android phones, and so on. And European Union then made all of those regulations, GDPR policies, and so on. And Google was in infringement of those policies, and they actually paid a fine of around $2 billion or something even more. And don't get me, don't hold me on that one, because I'm not 100% sure. But it was in billions. And when European Union asked them, okay, will you fix this problem with data and to actually implement the GDPR, the GDPR policies into your systems and into your tracking ecosystems, they simply replied, we'd rather pay the fines. Which means that data was so important to Google and to their clients that they were prepared to pay the fines rather than actually adjust their tracking systems to comply with new GDPR policies and regulations enforced by European Union. So, and this is a fun anecdote that I always love to use, because it shows how important data is, that Google was prepared to pay billions of dollars in fines just in order for them to keep tracking users the way they used to track them. Nowadays, Google simply had to back off because the regulations started to be more severe and severe. So they are definitely not tracking users as they were 5 or 6 years ago. But this is a fun anecdote to actually show how important the data is in understanding your audience and in understanding how will they behave and how can you approach them in the right manner. So as we talked about all of these principles and all of these setups and audiences and data and so on, it all comes down to, in Web3 at least, to virality. Like, are you viral enough to reach your audience organically? And then, of course, with paid advertising, which is obviously easier when you pay for something, like it's pay to win. But it obviously doesn't guarantee any kind of results, but it simply amplifies your presence, your organic presence. But in order for you to be organically viral, that definitely isn't luck. As you all know, I don't believe in luck. I only believe in opportunities. So basically, when you saw projects like BONK or Mad Lads or Tensor or Jupiter or Klano, and you thought to yourself, oh man, that BONK was in the right place and in the right time, and they got viral and they got pumped so hard, and it was just amazing. Tensor came as an underdog. Magic Eden had like 99% of market share where Tensor showed up. And after 6 months, people were talking about, oh man, they got lucky with that virality, totally retweeted them. Solana started to shield them and so on. It was so viral. Their content was so good and so on. But no. So everything is engineered, like everything is planned. And I know for a fact that all of these 5 teams, and I chose these 5 for a reason, because I actually know how they succeeded, except from Jupiter. And I mean, I don't have an inside information like I do have for these 4 others. But Jupiter is also a very good example of how they made it with this virality moment, which was, I'm 100% sure, pre-planned and pre-engineered to so little detail that they simply couldn't fail. Like when bonks first started out, they were like the first big meme coin on Solana. They are cute, they are recognizable. They airdropped their first allocation to top Solana NFT communities. By the way, I got like 2 billion BONK and I sold it for 2 Sol, which would be worth like hundreds of thousands of dollars now. So please bear with me here when I talk about BONK with voice lowered down and with all the flashbacks. But yeah, BONK played a very good game here because they understood their users, they understood the market, they understood when should they launch their token. Market was in a very good position for BONK to thrive at that time and do like 1000x from that pre-seed or pre-sale round, and they did it perfectly. And then all of their content, all of the influencers, all of the podcasters, all of the sponsorships, all of the real life events, it was all engineered for BONK to be recognized today as the meme coin of Solana. And that was a perfect example of how engineered virality actually works. The same happened with Mad Lads. Obviously started with NFT collection, and they are now our competitor after they launched Backpack. First the wallet, then their exchange, and so on and so on. But they also chose a perfect time in the market when NFT were still booming, but were maybe on a bit of a downtrend. But they launched in the perfect time, got so much hype, got so much momentum, and then after it all settled down a bit and also started to go down a bit, boom, we have our wallet. Bam, floor price went to 200. Then again, started to come down a bit again, boom, we have, and we are building an exchange. Armani Ferrante, I think he announced the Backpack exchange. No, I don't know. It was at Crossroads or it was at Breakpoint. I'm not sure. But he announced it there and boom, again, viral 3 times in a row. And obviously today they lost some of that momentum, but they engineered that virality to a perfection, I would say. The same happened with Tensor, with Jupiter, with Clinosaurs, but all of these 5 projects that are displayed here have, of course, very huge overlaps, but they do also have pretty different target groups, and pretty different audiences when it comes to usage of their product. And they all nailed it to perfection when it comes to being recognized as a leader in their respective field. For example, Mad Lads is not a leader in perspective of a wallet or even of an exchange, but at the time they were definitely a leader when it comes to an NFT Solana collection with wallet and exchange in the back of that whole machinery pushing them forward. So they definitely were a leader in that area of Solana ecosystem. And that's why virality is definitely not luck, it's engineered. And for you to be viral, you need to understand all of these things that I was talking about today, about all of those 3 principles, about your audiences, about community, about understanding your data, about setting up your data, and then being able to recognize, okay, this is the time for me to launch something, to go live with, whoops, what happened? Okay, sorry, I lost my display for a second. For you to be able to decide this is the moment that we want to go live with this growth campaign, we want to go live with this community initiative, we want to go live with this social media campaign, advertising campaign, and so on and so on. So everything needs to be taken into consideration for you to have the best opportunity to succeed in the end. So I would say that Web3 marketing, and this is quote by me, Web3 marketing isn't harder, it's just human first. So basically Web2 marketing always relies on a product, on a feature, and so on. But in Web3, you need to address your audience and your user first, understand their needs. Obviously, you also need to do that in Web2, but in Web3, it's a bit more tribal, as it says here. and trust obsessed. Because in Web3, you are actually constantly managing or influencing personal finances of your users in one way or the other, like with your token, with your product, with NFTs, with meme coins, and so on. People are actually using their real money, or they are trading, or they are gaining or losing money based on what is going on the market. And most, if not all, crypto products are based around DeFi, dApps, trading, swaps, wallets, exchanges, and so on and so on. Everything is about cryptocurrencies at the end of the day. So that's why you need to produce or create that trust obsessed environment where you have trust of your users, which I think that Solflare definitely has. And then if you trust that product, then you can have a loyal user in terms of retention, acquisition, word of mouth. For example, if somebody asks you, hey, look, I want to be on board on crypto, I want to try out crypto, what would you recommend? And if you recommend Solflare, that means that Solflare has a good tribal moment, and that people actually trust Solflare as a product. And that is what you need to focus on in Web3, and definitely be always user first in order to understand your audience and in order to approach them in the right manner. So Web3 marketing and versus Web2 marketing, I would say it isn't harder, as it says here. It's just human first and trust obsessed in opposed to Web2 marketing. One and the other have their challenges, obviously, but it just what is required is a different approach. So if you can tell a story about your product, about your community, about your vision and mission, and back that story with your product, which should be a trustworthy product, a good product, a product that users would benefit from. Plus, you have community on your side, as I said before, which is one of the most important things in crypto and Web3, then you will win. 100%. If you have those three categories satisfied, those goals met, you will 100% win. Of course, nothing is 100%. As I said, there are some external factors like market conditions, like, world economy, World War III, I don't know. There are external, obviously, factors that come into play. But from solely a marketing point of view, if you focus on those three things and all of the external factors are perfect, market is perfect, economy, world economy is perfect, everything is perfect, you will win. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but you will win. So I want to thank you all for being with me here today. And I really do hope that it was interesting to you and that you could pick up some useful tips and tricks, but also some useful strategies in marketing when it comes to your personal branding. But also, as I said, this was more business oriented. And yeah, just remember everything that I told you today, and I really hope that you will succeed when it comes to business or owning a business in crypto, but also working for a business or a company in crypto on any kind of position that you will be hired on. So yeah, thanks so much. It was a pleasure, and I really hope that we will chat soon and talk about some other topics on my third workshop. Who knows? But yeah, thank you guys.